Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Padel Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 105, and as always, joined by my co-host Hugo here today. Hugo, it's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. Pleasure to be back. It's been about a month since we last recorded an episode, am I right?
Yeah, maybe potentially even longer than that. We've taken a bit of a break ourselves, but yeah, it was well and truly needed, and we very much enjoyed it, I think.
No, definitely. I think it was deserved, it was necessary, and to be honest, August is, pretty much a kind of paralysis month for the paddle world. Players go on holiday, Premier Paddle paused for a whole month. I know there were a few exhibition tournaments here and there, but yeah, let's be honest. Now, first week of September, the first major tournament having just been played in Madrid. Unfortunately, we didn't get to go and watch it, even though we're both based in Madrid, as many of you know. But yeah, a lot of things going on. So we didn't have a chance to get down to the Movistar Arena, which is where it was hosted, which was a shame. But at the same time, I did watch pretty much about every single match that was played throughout the Madrid P1. So yeah, great to have paddle back and great to be back chatting with you, mate.
No, exactly. Yeah, very much enjoying to be back. And of course, the Madrid P1, what a tournament. Shocking news. Very excited to be here and kind of say, there's a different winner other than Coello and Tapia. And of course, that's Augsburger and Martín di Nenno. Who would have seen this coming? Definitely not me. I don't know about you, Hugo. Maybe you want to go and kick us off with, this run, which, not just the final itself, but their whole tournament was absolutely outstanding, really.
Yeah, I do have to say that I had expectations for this partnership. I did personally, and I know when we commented it, Gons, you were a little bit more skeptical. I'm going to have to say, hey, I was a little bit more right, but I've got to be honest, I did not think they were going to go and win a tournament this quickly. To be honest, I wasn't really sure whether they were going to win a tournament at all this season. What I did think...
Didn't.
Sorry?
I certainly didn't think so. And now I've got to eat my words.
No, exactly. As I say, I wouldn't have bet my house on them winning a tournament this season, and they've only gone and done it. And they've only gone and beaten the number 1, 2, and 3 seeds along the way. Quarterfinals against Galán, comfortable win. Semifinals against Lebron and Stupa, an epic win in the tiebreak of the third set against a pair who'd lost about 4 games throughout their Madrid tournament up until the semi-finals. They absolutely spanked all their rivals. And then in the final, they beat the number ones, the Golden Boys, the dominating pair in the world. Completely deserved. And as I say, I did have hopes for this partnership. I think it made sense. I think that they were, when I was thinking about them on paper, I just thought it's a bit like Galán, but, well, obviously Augsburger is even more aggressive than Galán. And I'd say the Nenno probably is a little bit more aggressive than Chingotto as well. So, yeah, I did think they were going to cause some upsets, but my word, I did not think that this was going to happen. And yeah, maybe kicking off and talking about them as a pair and their game throughout the week. As I say, looking at the quarterfinals against Galán, they won 2 sets. Comfortable. I know that it was just a break in each set, and at the end of the day, that can happen. What I mean by that is that it could have gone either way. But when you actually look at the gameplay, I thought that Augsburger di Nenno just looked way more comfortable than Galán. It was one of those matches where Chingotto was struggling to be super offensive, and di Nenno and Augsburger were really picking him out well, playing very deep lods into Chingotto's side, which Galán wasn't managing to cover that much. And then from Galán, what we saw is that, at least in my eyes, it was that frustration coming back again when you're kind of slightly being frozen out of the match. So you're having to play shots in positions that you're not comfortable in, and ultimately the Nenno and Augsburger played the perfect match. Beating Galán in 2 sets is truly special. And then, as I briefly mentioned, that semi-final against Stupa and Lebrón, I did think that Stupa and Lebrón had it dominated after winning that first set, but the Nenno and Augsburger never gave up. They always believed in making it to the final, and I thought the tiebreak that they played was pretty much inch perfect, whereas from Lebron and Stupa's side, Stupa I thought was sensational right up until halfway throughout the third set, and then he really tanked. I must say that I did watch that match again yesterday, and I didn't think that Lebron had a very good match at all. I mean, his unforced error count was, well, too high for a player of his caliber, and I actually think it was probably higher than the amount of winners he generated. So that's not reasonable. I mean, Gons, if you want to maybe kick it off with the final, because I know that I've been speaking for about 5 minutes, but yeah, Gons, what were your thoughts on the big matchup against the number ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think very similar to the matchup against in the semifinals against Lebron and Stupa. Like in a way, I mean, obviously the score is similar in the sense that they lost that first set, Leo Augsburger and Nenno, and then they ended up winning the remaining 2 sets. So in that sense, it was similar, but also just similar in the sense that they just always managed to hang in there, like make it difficult. It didn't seem at any point that you know, anyone was truly controlling the match. And I feel like that's, huge props to them, because obviously it kind of shows a bit like their mental strength and resilience, even though after, losing that first set, you're in a final, you could potentially, it could go down and derail. And how many times have we seen, for example, Cardona and Augsburger lose a super tight first set against Galán, like 7-6, and then all of a sudden the second set is a riot and they lose 6-1 because they just lose, all confidence, all concentration, and kind of give up. And maybe this is kind of the stability that Nenno is maybe bringing Augsburger. And in that sense, I think they complement each other so well, because you've heard Nenno throughout the whole week kind of saying that Augsburger is a bit crazy on court, and in a way he loves that, right? But at the same time, I think that really only works when you have someone that is like so good emotionally, so stable, like Martín Nenno, who's able to help kind of Augsburger ride through the wave of emotions, and kind of ride through that crazy side of him, which is, it's kind of what makes him special. The fact that he's got so much confidence in his smash, and no matter where he is in the court, even if he misses like 5 or 6 smashes, like it doesn't matter. If there's a ball in the air, he's going to go and smash it, which I just think no matter the point as well, like, even if it's a break point down or something like that, like it's just truly remarkable how much confidence he has in himself and his abilities. And obviously that's one of the things that, makes him such a great player. So they do complement each other quite well. And yeah, I mean, it was a truly, it was quite an even affair, the match. I felt that, which I thought was kind of interesting, was that they, as opposed to the semi-final, where I felt it was quite clear that Lebron and Stupa were avoiding Augsburger at all costs. Like even not just with the lobs, but even with volleys and ground strokes and everything. Like I felt like the play was so much directed to the Nenno. Whereas in this final, I felt like it was a lot more evened out. And I can understand that in a way, because obviously, if you're Coello and Tapia, you're thinking like, we're the number ones. Like we don't need to, really like, we don't need to like, differentiate who we play to and stuff. And obviously, if you play more to Augsburger, Tapia probably also means he'll get more involved, which is obviously also good for the partnership. But I just felt like maybe they could have adjusted in some moments and potentially focus a lot more on the Nenno than they did. I mean, most of the play still did kind of go through him, but I didn't feel like there was this clear distinction. And I felt like Augsburger was very much involved throughout, which is obviously a positive for the Nenno and Augsburger. And I will say as well, something that amazes me about this partnership, given that they are, it's still a relatively young partnership. They did have obviously August maybe to work on their games. But other than that, this is the second tournament that they've played together, and still they seemed like so in sync, which is unbelievable. Like the amount of times that Augsburger goes over to the Nenno side when there's a lob in the air, and how fast he is like to get to those lobs, it's just unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, historic run, because obviously, as you mentioned, they beat the number one seed, the number one seeds, the number 2 and the number 3, which is never done in paddle history. So I mean, it just kind of speaks to the fact that the tournament that they've accomplished is truly outstanding. And like you mentioned at the beginning, I was maybe a bit of a skeptic on this partnership, and like I said, I probably have to eat my words. And there was a lot of, I guess, I wouldn't say like not hate, but like maybe controversy, or just like a bit divided opinions regarding both of them. Why did Leo split with Cardona, given that they'd still achieved quite decent results, beat basically every single pair, and they also have that projection because they're such young players. And then on the Nenno side, obviously the fact that he's been changing a lot, like partners a lot. And in a way, both of them, I think, have been kind of vindicated by their decision, and kind of no matter what they accomplish going forward, I mean, it basically, they made the right decision because they ended up winning a tournament, and ultimately that's the goal. I mean, I'm sure obviously they have, even more ambitious goals, but still, like, they managed to achieve something that with their previous partners, at least this year, they weren't able to do so. So yeah, I mean, massive props to them because they do deserve it.
No, exactly. I mean, one thing I kept on thinking after every upset that they caused was, wow, they're going to prove all the doubters, all the haters wrong. I mean, more than haters, it was the doubters. But yeah, I just think that what really, or one of the reasons why, and it's proved to be, this is the perfect example as to why Augsburger decided to look away from Cardona and team up with the Nenno, is that fighting spirit, that never giving up. And you pinpointed that a few minutes ago when you said that we've seen, I mean, obviously Cardona and Augsburger were the only pair to beat the top 3 pairs this season out of the rest. And everyone was thinking, Augsburger, why would you look elsewhere? But as you said, they beat them, but maybe they beat one of them on the way to the semis or the final and then lose to one of the other big dogs, which is normal. But I think a lot of the times they'd put up a fight, and then as soon as things started going the other way, they'd completely tank. And I don't think the Nenno allows that. I just think he's a workhorse. So you've got a workhorse whose defensive abilities and mindset are his biggest strengths, and then you've just got an absolute animal who smacks everything in and around the air and has, I think, pretty much objectively right now, the best smash on tour.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that specifically marked the final. I know it marked the other games as well, but I thought in the final, one of the classic plays that Tapia and Coello do is Tapia plays the lob to the player in front of him, enabling Coello to push up to the net, play the block, and then that's how they win the net. The issue was that every time Tapia was playing that lob, Augsburger would just run in behind the Nenno and smack it. And they'd win about 80% of the points, 80% of the points when that happened. So the other option for Tapia, and I think this also reflects why they weren't managing to play the ball to the Nenno that much, is, okay, Tapia would say, okay, I'll play a normal ground stroke to the Nenno at the volley. But he was getting up so tight to the net that it was a massive risk, and it was going to be a very easy por cuatro. So I think that forced Tapia to have to play that cross-court battle with Augsburger, which all in all really didn't benefit them. I mean, I don't think it benefited Coello and Tapia. We saw Tapia being absolutely knackered at the end. I thought he was injured, but I just think it was well, sorry, you jump in, Gons.
No, I mean, I thought at some points he seemed even like sick, to be honest. Like, just kind of felt like he was a bit off. But yeah.
Apparently, it could have been like a low blood sugar or something like that, because they were giving him like, supplements and gels. Firstly, I thought he was injured, and I was like, oh my God, this could really change things. Like, we've got the Paris Major starting tomorrow, etc. But it feels like, or when it went on and over the changeovers, they were giving him gels, etc. They weren't kind of touching any of his muscles or anything. So it felt like it was more that. But obviously, because of that tactic on behalf of the Nenno and Augsburger, it meant that Tapia was having to play so many balls and play cross-court against, inform Augsburger, who's a 21-year-old nutcase who is about 6'6" and just absolutely smashes everything that goes in front of him. So when it's his day, and it clearly was his day, and it's been his week in Madrid, it's so hard to play against him. So, yeah, I mean, credit to both the Nenno and Augsburger, because they've really silenced the doubters. And I think from the Nenno's side, he's proved what he said in a few interviews. And it's the fact that Augsburger is a number 1 candidate over the next few years, is probably the hottest young prospect in padel, period. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in and around that age that is as clear a candidate for the number 1 spot at some point in his career. So
like achieved the things that he's achieved, because obviously he won the World Cup last year. Now he's won a Premier Padel tournament. He's made like another, couple of finals, both Premier Padel level and World Padel Tour. So, I mean, yeah, it's truly remarkable.
Exactly. And being honest, even if the Nenno and Tello would have had an unbelievable tournament, I really did not think that they could go and beat the top 3 seeds in a row. I just didn't think so. As I think that the Nenno and Augsburger potentially could tank against a lower ranked pair at some point. over the next few months, just because maybe Augsburger has an off game and his smash doesn't work, or maybe it's a really slow court. I think that can happen, and maybe Tapia and Nenno would, on paper, look a bit more regular. But on the flip side, Augsburger really feels like he's the one to challenge the big backhand players in that cross-court battle, and he's ready for the big nights and the big days. I mean, he's proved it, right? Bringing pressure does not it's not part of his vocabulary. And that last game when they were serving to win the match, obviously imagine the pressure on a 21-year-old who's never won a major tournament. And I think he went for smashes in every single point.
Yeah.
Winning, I think 3 out of 4. I think one of the points they didn't win, but they won every other point. So yeah, I mean, my word, what a prospect. I really do think he'll be the number 1 in the world sooner than later.
No, for sure. And something that amazes me about him, and kind of, I think, to one of your points, like how, for example, Tapia had to play a lot of cross court because Nenno was so tight to the net, is the fact that, you know, the amount of ground that Augsburger is able to cover in the air just basically allows Nenno to do that, right? Because if Augsburger isn't able to get to the Nenno side on time and to have an effective smash, obviously the Nenno can't get up so tight, because, it would be really easy to just like put him a lob and kind of win the net that way. And we see it a lot with Galán, right? Like
Correct.
Galán, a lot of the times he does cover some of Chingotto's ground, but it's not like he covers everything. And I think we've said that also in so many matches when they lost, the fact that we always felt like Galán needed to cover more of Chingotto's ground and get into his side. The fact that Augsburger is able to do that so effectively that, his partner is like, okay, I'm just going to stick to the net and be really aggressive here. It's just like remarkable, because it's so hard to be able to, cover that much air and, get in time, get in a position where you're still able to produce an effective smash. Like, even sometimes I'm looking at him and saying like, dude, like the way you're smashing, like your weight is all wrong, your body position. And yet, I don't know how, but his ball just flies into the air. It's just like really, like, just outstanding. I feel like he has so much power, or like, elasticity in his wrists, that he's able to generate so much spin to the ball that no matter, his real position and stuff, like, the ball just flies.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think he's got the best smasher on tour. We've always spoken about probably Tapia, Galán and Lebrón in his prime. Thinking about the biggest smashes, I know there's a lot of other players that have got great smash, but it's just Augsburger's movement looks like so easy for him. You sometimes feel with other players that, hey, maybe if they've gone for 4 or 5 smashes in the last 10 points, they're a bit tired. This guy really does not care. I don't know whether it's due to the fact that he's 21 years old. I don't know what it is. It's it's a joke. So I think it's exactly what the Nenno needs. Clearly, it's right, because the Nenno was struggling to add that extra spice to his game, that extra attacking spice. And I think now, with Augsburger, he probably doesn't need to. I mean, he can obviously be ultra aggressive and, get uptight really close to the net and try to make his volleys generate that advantage for then to come in and smack it and put it away. So, yeah, I mean, my hopes are high for them for the rest of the season, to be honest. I mean, the fact that they've already won a tournament is going to be a huge boost for them. So, yeah, excited for what's to come.
No, for sure. I mean, we've got definitely new partnership in the fold now that, they can challenge and then kind of win tournaments. And maybe moving on, and kind of, I think this is maybe a nice segue, because it's a question that I wanted to ask you is, do you think that now, because, we're going to start maybe talking about Lebron and Stupa, and I think this is kind of related, but we obviously know that at the end of the last year, there were heavy rumors that Lebron was going to go with Augsburger. And I mean, we obviously know how Stupa and Lebron are doing now, which obviously things seem a bit rocky, like they basically do every week, and maybe they haven't achieved the results that they're hoping for. And now that Augsburger is at this level, do you think that it could be possible that at the end of the year, Lebron calls Augsburger and they pair up? Because, I mean, I definitely see it very likely now.
I mean, it's the first thing that one of the main things that I've been thinking about, how much I love these player rumors. And I've always thought that Lebron and Augsburger were going to team up together and be the bad boys of Padel. And I think they
also get along.
Exactly. They do. I actually saw that in Lebron's post on Instagram, which I always love looking at social media, because I think it does tell a story more often than not. And Lebron did a post about, hey, shame that we fell in the semi-finals, etc. And Augsburger came in saying, eres un crack, you're pro. And obviously Lebron replied, thanks, big hug, whatever. So there's clearly a relationship there. I think, yeah, with Lebron and Stupa's season, it's quite hard because I think they're having a good season in the sense that they've beaten both Galán and Coello and Tapia. They've won a tournament. They've been very unlucky with injuries as well. So it's not that they're not having a good season, but I do think that if they don't win a tournament between now and the end of 2025, they will part ways, because I think Lebron is like that. He's very hot-headed, he's very emotional, and he's very ambitious. And if Lebron looks elsewhere, I think the only option on the table, beyond Galán, obviously, but it feels like that relationship is not there at the moment, is Augsburger. Now, from Augsburger's perspective, Lebron still has more points than Nenno, so he's even more attractive than Nenno. I think we can both agree that in their prime, Lebron is better than Nenno. And I don't think that Lebron is that far off Nenno at the moment. I'd say that up until this tournament, Lebron was having a far, far, far better season than Nenno. So it's hard to say that now after this, hey, no, Augsburger shouldn't team up with Lebron because Nenno's just won this tournament with him. I wouldn't agree. All in all, I think it's definitely on the table. And I think what would definitely happen if that happened would be the return of the Super Pibes, because it would just be so easy for them to get back. But yeah, Gons, what are your thoughts?
No, I definitely think that it's very much on the table. I mean, my point of view is probably what could happen is Lebron and Stupa split, basically for the reasoning that you give. And then that makes Lebron call Augsburger. Like, I don't necessarily think that, obviously we still have to see how the end of years goes. But even if potentially they don't necessarily have to win another tournament, obviously if they win another tournament, it's unbelievable. Yeah. But let's just say, they still make, they're the 7th seed, right? So, if they still make like a semi-final here and there, they're always in the quarters. Like if they're always contending, and they have a good season, I don't necessarily think they'll be looking to split. But the question is, what happens if Lebron and Stupa split and then Lebron calls Augsburger, right? That to me is the key. And if you are Augsburger and you receive the call from Lebron, I think it'll be very hard not to take it. I would say that even though Nenno has won a tournament this year, and arguably, obviously, Lebron and Stupa also won a tournament, even though that was kind of a bit of a joke. But, obviously the Nenno's tournament is a lot better than the one Lebron and Stupa won. But I do feel like individually, I think Lebron has had a better season. Like I would say, I still think that Lebron is potentially the better player. And as you highlighted, he still obviously has more points than Nenno. So I think from that regard, it might be more attractive to Augsburger. I also think there's an element of, and I saw in the semi-final, like when Lebron and Stupa were clearly targeting Nenno, like I did see a level of frustration in Augsburger, kind of just not being involved in the match at all. I think like he was just very serious, like you could see in his face. And obviously credit to Nenno to make sure that, they still managed to kind of turn it around and get him a bit more involved. But I could see in a way that if, you're Augsburger and basically every single match is you're getting barely any balls, you're not getting targeted at all. It can be a bit annoying. And obviously when you play, if you're playing with Lebron, then it's maybe not so easy, right? To just go after Lebron every single time. So I think in that regard as well, it could be potentially interesting for Augsburger. But yeah, that's kind of my view on what he can think. Now there's a question as to, is it more beneficial to have a player like Nenno that we just spoken about that, through the bad times, the tough moments in matches, he's still going to pull you through. He's going to support you and he's going to, make it a battle? Or do you want someone like Lebron that isn't potentially the best partner out?
Yeah, that is the question, quite literally. I think we've both said this, but I want to be even clearer. I think it's pretty objective if we say that Lebron has had a better season than Nenno so far. I know he's won this tournament, but individually,
I would say individually, yes.
So much better. Individually, I'm saying, not as a pair, but obviously that I think when you look at potential partnership pairings, you've got to also analyze the individual performances. So you'd say, yeah, Lebron has been better than the Nenno. And I'd say that Lebron and Augsburger's ceiling is still higher than the Nenno and Augsburger's, because there's been moments throughout the season when I've felt that Lebron has been back to his prime, honestly. Like, even this week in Madrid, I know he didn't have the toughest rivals, but there were a few matches where he had 0 unforced errors. I saw it on various social media accounts. 0 unforced errors for a player like Lebron, who's constantly looking to generate plays and create angles and take risks. It's unbelievable. So I think from Lebron's perspective, he will definitely give Augsburger that call, just because if he doesn't have an unbelievable end of the season with Stupa, he will think that he'll probably never get to the number 1 rank with Stupa. And I think as soon as he sees that, and if he sees that, he'll look elsewhere, because that's how ambitious he is. And yeah, as I say, I mean, Augsburger could literally be his last train to get back to the number 1 rank, because if you'd only consider him getting back to the top, maybe with Galán, but if that's not on the table, then Augsburger will literally be his last train. I mean, he's not that young, Lebron. Let's think about it. He's 30. I know in the paddle world you can play till, I mean, Bella played till 40 something, but I don't think you can aspire to be the number 1 in the world that far past, say, I don't know, 35, 36, maybe?
No, it's true. Yeah. I mean, we've seen Paquito, right? Like, I mean, he hasn't challenged for the number 1 since, he split with the Nenno. Like, obviously, he's been good. He's been, reaching finals, winning tournaments here and there, being in the semifinals, and Lebron can still do that at, 35, 36. But to challenge for the number 1 in the world, like, yeah, as you say, the time is passing by.
No, exactly. And I think it's also a big difference is today's, and the trend of today's paddle is just getting faster, more explosive, more reactive, more aggressive. So the older you get, the harder it is for you to challenge, say, Leo Augsburger, this 21-year-old 6'6" machine that just slaps anything that he sees. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking as soon as Lebron identifies that he won't be able to reach the number 1 rank with Stupa, which, who knows? I mean, right now it's a big leap away, but I've seen very good signs of them as a pair, and I do think they work. It's just whether they can be better than the other top pairs. But yeah, if he sees that that's gonna, be just too much of an ask or impossible, he'll look at Augsburger for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they are maybe going a bit more into Lebron and Stupa. Like, I mean, I as you say, like, I was so like, their run this tournament was unbelievable. It seemed like one of those Chingalan runs that they're just like absolutely slapping everybody like 6-1, 6-2, and not even breaking a sweat. So I was like quite encouraged by that. And then in the actual match, like when it started against Leo and Augsburger, the Nenno and Augsburger, I thought they had quite a clear plan. It seemed like they were freezing out Augsburger quite a bit. They were controlling. They got that break early on. They managed to close the set. They obviously had a break in the second set. So it seemed like everything was just like, going quite well. And like, it seemed like everything was kind of under control. And then all of a sudden, one game, and, as you say, maybe just when things get a bit tight is when all of a sudden the dynamic changes. I even saw Lebron early on in that game, like being quite encouraging. Like there's a couple of moments where Stupa maybe missed and Lebron was like, still clapping and everything and, saying like, hey, that was a good play. And also sometimes in that first set where Lebron made a couple of unforced errors and he was like, pointing towards Stupa, like, I'm sorry, like that was my bad. So, even from that sense, I was thinking like, oh, wow, okay, like, at least he's maybe progressing. He's like trying to work on things. I mean, I'm sure he's obviously trying to work on this and he's mentioned it many times, but all of a sudden, when things then started to get tight, and then in that third set, I mean, it was like Lebron was throwing daggers at Stupa every time he missed, and I've never really seen a tie break. Like, I've just never really seen him play like that. In that tie break, he honestly, there was like a stretch of 3 or 4 points where he was just like missing the most simple things, like just very uncharacteristic, unforced errors, and it just seemed like he was so tight. So yeah, it just feels like when things aren't going that well, they all of a sudden, maybe gets a bit mental and, obviously then affects the gameplay and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a shame in that regard.
No, for sure. I mean, I think we've spoken about this on offline gons literally yesterday, I think. And I very clearly see that with Lebron, you either get a 5 out of 10 performance, more or less, or a 9/10 out of 10 performance. And that semi-final was a 5 out of 10 performance. it just feels like he's either super ultra confident and he can play every single shot in the book, which is probably what he can do at training when he's got zero pressure. Or as soon as things start going wrong, he, adds 2 or 3 unforced errors in a row, then he just loses his head. And that's a big problem, because I'd say one of the reasons why Coello and Tapia are where they are is because they manage to pull through and win matches even when they're not at their best. And it just feels that Lebron doesn't really have that side to his game right now. Another point that I wanted to mention is that in that semi-final matchup, so Stupa Lebron against Augsburger and the Nenno, that when analysing the gameplay, etc., the score that Stupa was having from a statistical point of view, and I'm saying this because I heard it, the Premier Padel commentator mentioned this a lot, Stupa's statistics were so much better than anyone else's on the court. So Augsburger, Di Nenno, and Lebron by far. So, and that was basically right up until the end. And I know that Stupa made some, really disappointing errors in the tiebreak. I think he was at fault of most of the points that Lebron and Stupa lost in the tiebreak. But looking at the match, I thought that Stupa looked back to his best. He was dominating. He was the one that was really, he was the one that has basically won that first set for Stupa and Lebron. And he was also holding them in the match with Lebron making unforced errors. And I didn't think that Lebron was having a great game. So it's just a big shame that when you get to that pivotal moment, Stupa feels that pressure. And I think part of it is due to Lebron's attitude. You can't be super positive, etc., when everything's going well. And then as soon as something turns and momentum turns, go the opposite way. And I think that's happening consistently. So that's my biggest concern about them as a pair. I think their game styles work very well. They're both unbelievably fast. They want to win the net. They're good at the when you have those choques de volea, and they're both very good volleyers. And I think personality-wise, they get on. I just feel that when things go wrong and Lebron starts pulling faces and recriminating some of the things that Stupa does and some of the points he plays, then everything changes. And I don't think that from what we've seen so far, that will enable them to reach the number 1 spot and win enough tournaments.
No, I would agree. And it's just weird because we've never really seen, I just don't think I remember seeing really Stupa in that sense, like just kind of not like being afraid of, taking certain risks or like shots and stuff, but just like feeling that, just feeling tight. It's just when you look at him, he just seems like in these kind of pressure points, like he doesn't feel like he's like his normal self. And, he's always been a player that's like so regarded as to like, what he can do offensively and the fact that he's always like, wanting to attack and how good he is defending and everything. So it's just a bit strange in that regard. But I mean, we'll see obviously how the rest of the season goes. I mean, they still have a chance to, pick things up. I mean, as you said, objectively, they're probably not having a terrible season either. So, I mean, we don't have to be super negative. It's just that obviously when you bake, expectations into account and the fact that, obviously their own expectations of themselves, they probably think that they can, be doing a lot better. But I mean, Hugo, I don't know, maybe this brings us to the end of the episode, given that we've been here a while. And I mean, I think we've probably covered the main topics, or the ones that I think are probably most interesting. I do hope that everyone's enjoyed, back with Padel, back obviously the Padel pod as well. So I do hope that everyone's enjoyed listening. Please do give a thumbs up and subscribe and a like if you have enjoyed, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys. Great to be back and catch you very soon. Have a good one.